Hello, Facebook and YouTube. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to episode 2, or actually episode 1, because the first one was actually episode 0 of the brand new live show that we're doing here. So let us know in the comments if you can hear us okay, and if you're excited to be here. My name is Logan Hart.
And I'm Brian Easterday.
Leave a comment if you can hear Brian as well. So as I've just said, this is a brand new show. So please bear with us as we're still trying to work out lots of bugs and other things and just natural, parts of the process of doing something of this scope. But overall, very excited to be here. And today will be our first topical discussion. As last time, we simply came back from our hiatus and we explained a bit about what we've been doing and what we're going to be doing next. So if you did miss that one, I highly recommend going back on our page. It's on Facebook and YouTube, and reviewing that as well. But with that moving forward, essentially this is the new format of our regular content that we will be doing weekly. The podcast will still continue, but just on a more as needed as a natural flow kind of basis rather than having a deadline. So that's what you can expect from us. Do follow us on both platforms if you're not already. Turn on notifications, that way you'll see when we're live and you can come and interact with us and engage, because that's really what we wanted to focus more on too, as well as, like, at least for me especially, I'm not trying to be a guru, I don't want to be on a pedestal. I'm just another human having a spiritual experience, and so I'm sharing, and Brian is sharing, we're sharing our experiences, and we want you to be a part of that, and we want it to be an open dialogue, not just us pontificating about truth and all of that, just a one-directional conversation. So, Brian, do you have anything to add? How are you feeling today, man?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm excited to get into the topic. We have a great topic today. Discussion between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. But first, I'd like to mention a few people who've been donating to the Patreon that we'd like to thank. So Jeremy Moore, Michael Brown, Susan Hart, obviously Logan's lovely lady. And then these last two names, I'm sorry if I butcher these, but Edas Hugh and then GY. Whoever you are, thank you very much for the support. We appreciate that a lot.
Indeed. And as we said, we're going to be focusing more on the Patreon as well, so there will be more familiarity with those of you who are a part of that. And we're going to be contacting you directly very soon to discuss the future of the Patreon. So, indeed, let's get into the topical discussion. Brian, just keep in mind your chair's like pretty squeaky, so that's coming through.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you all for the patrons. Thank you very much. We appreciate that, and we're going to be working more on that very soon. So what are we getting into today? A nice general, I'd say. We're not getting too specific. It's masculine and feminine energy. These are absolutely, by definition, universal forces, but Brian and I have kind of mentioned and noticed a few times that although it's a very foundational area, it's not one that we have as much focused on specifically. It's come up in lots of other conversations and other discussions, but we haven't too much focus on that specifically. So we thought that would just be a good, easy place to start off this new series and get into something kind of new and fresh and exciting. So if that sounds if that sounds good to you, let us know in the comments below. Engagement is key. Where the algorithms are constantly fighting good and truthful content. So please do give us a like on whatever platform you're on. It's free and it's about the most potent thing that you can do to support our content. So we really appreciate that. So masculine and feminine, let's get into that. Obviously, everybody knows men and women, gender. These are more, I'd say, the exoteric way of looking at that. But as it is, it's apparent in that way because it is so universal. But as you know, we like to look a little bit deeper, a little bit more into the esoteric side of things. So with that said, I think a great place to approach this topic as a whole is by starting with the Hermetic principle of gender and polarity. There's actually multiple of those that I feel kind of fit the overall topic. And just in that in of itself shows that it's not a black and white topic that you can kind of pigeonhole very easily. So that's our intent, or that's not our intent. Our intent is to have a more holistic approach. And so getting into this, Brian, why don't you? I feel like I'm talking a lot. Why don't you
No,
start
you're
with
fine.
the Hermetic principle, explaining like
Sure.
the ones that
Well,
apply.
yeah. First, I did want to mention something that you had said that I thought was a good point, and it's that the law of gender, that there's a masculine and a feminine, and it manifests on all planes. So that's the spiritual plane, the physical plane. It's you can see it in everywhere and everything. But you can also see the law of polarity. That there's a pendulum swing that goes back and forth. There's different poles, opposites, but really opposites are just the same, just difference in appearance. But I like that you mentioned that those can tie together, because that's really how universal law works, is that each and every one of those laws, you can see all the other ones contained within.
Mm-hmm.
So by understanding one, you can understand the others. By understanding the others, you can understand the one. You have to be able to mirror these things back and forth and tie them all together. So if you really want to understand masculine and feminine, you have to also understand the other cosmic laws as well, because they will give you other insights, other perspectives, and filters through which to view the understanding of the masculine and feminine through. And a good place to start, at least for today, in the limited time that we have, is really leaning into the law of gender, of masculine and feminine, as well as the law of polarity. And obviously we'll probably tie some other ones in there too.
Absolutely. Well said. So let's take a look at these comments here for just a second, because I do appreciate you all tuning in. This is very exciting. It's a much different experience than what the podcast recording is like. So I hope the audio is better. Maybe I can try to speak closer to the mic as well. Again, it's all a learning process. So you guys are just on this journey with us. Looks like people are liking the direction as far as like the content matter, and someone says hello from England. So Craig, welcome. Hello from America. Let's see here. All right. So great points there, Brian.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I'm a bit flustered just with multitasking everything. So.
Oh yeah, no, you're perfectly fine. So, I can keep going with it. So, a really great place to, before we lead into the next point, let's dive a little bit more into just the essence of the masculine and feminine. That, like Logan mentioned, it's not just this black and white thing. You can see one contained within the other. Or to really have a healthy expression of the masculine, it has to be united with the feminine. to have a healthy expression of the feminine, it has to be united with the masculine. If you're only locked in one or the other, you're in a place of imbalance. You know, uh, so to start understanding the masculine and feminine, I think the best place to start is with the basics. You know, and one of the great tools that I find very useful, and that I definitely apply in my astrology practice a lot, is using the elements, and we'll get to that a little bit more. But those are one of the great foundational tools for being able to understand masculine and feminine, and we'll, like I said, we'll open that up here a little bit more as we get further down the discussion. Uh, but understanding that masculine is that strong, firm, action oriented, logical, like wants to protect, wants to take initiative on things. Those type of things. And you could go on and on with descriptive words because everything in the universe is masculine or feminine, right? So, but those are the general idea. And then you understand that the feminine is soft, it's receiving. It's round, it's curved, it's able to take things into itself. Whereas the masculine's about initiating things. And that leads into our next point, is that when you understand the masculine and feminine, you're looking at the interaction of consciousness in a very sensual way, right? Because that's what's creating everything. Everything in the universe is coming from the birth of this masculine and feminine united together, and it is a very sensual thing. So it's useful to be able to understand that this is going on cosmically, and then you can see it within the microcosm, within yourself, within your relationships, and you can start to see how you can use these different forces together, and when to lean more into one and when to lean more into the other, as a way of keeping a balance point, and trying to find that middle ground, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, you hit on a lot of stuff there. Now I can try to get caught up now that I feel like I have my
Yeah. You're good. No worries.
Okay, so yeah, that's what was striking me here, is that first and foremost, you you want to have the animist perspective. Take on the animist mindset, something we talk a whole lot about. I mean, you can't talk about it enough because it has to be there in every, it's your lens through viewing all of the world. So when you do that in this case, what are you doing but observing nature? Imagine like a botanist. You'd go out into the wild, and you'd have a notebook and a pen, and you just, if you're a botanist, your job is to study nature. And how do you do that? You just observe and you write things down. But if you just did that, it wouldn't really be a means to an end. You need to apply your consciousness to it, your intelligence to it, and extrapolate the patterns that nature is exhibiting, the emergent properties of new awareness, essentially. And so you want to apply that to everything. So in this case, we're talking about masculine and feminine. Well, what are those? Well, imagine it's your job to study those. You just, once you recognize what is this I'm looking at, then you're just saying, okay, what am I seeing? What are its characteristics? How can I identify that? And make sure that you're noting those things correctly. Because if I told you, I want you to describe a car to me, like what fundamentally describe a car, and you say, well, it's blue. Well, that's the wrong way, because yes, some cars can be blue, but they're not defined by the color blue. That's just one way that they can show up. So what you want to do is identify those characteristics that are constant, that are actually essential, the essence of essential to that thing. In this case, like Brian was just uh, naming off those characteristics, that's exactly how you have to view that. Is the point of that and the actual usefulness, because right, if it's not useful, then what use is it? It is that once you do that, then you have calibrated your intelligence, your awareness to identify and recognize those characteristics when you see them. And then that empowers you in the moment as it's happening and how you choose to react, what energy you choose to lean into to meet that experience to get the outcome that you want. Ergo, verbatim what magic is, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of my like presuppositions, I guess you could say, my laying the foundation there. And then, as Brian was saying, again, taking it back to the animist mindset and viewing everything, observing things, not trying to always just interject what you think it is onto it before it's given a chance to show itself truthfully and you to receive that truthfully. You're also needing to view everything from a lens of not only literal truth because it's happening in reality, but metaphorical truth because essentially all is the all. All is singing the same song just in a different way, a different tune, a different tempo. And so if you're paying attention to that, you have to be able to see, and read things literally, but also what is metaphor, you're extrapolating those bigger patterns, but you're just applying kind of more of a story to it. It's easier. The brain really understands for whatever reason that psychologically that's why we love lore and the greatest story ever told. There's a reason those things have an allure to us. In gamification too, is because it is metaphor for what we're actually doing here, literally, which is why you have to keep both in mind. It's just funny how that kind of comes full circle. But just to, I know I'm kind of getting long-winded now, but just to kind of like tie that all together, essentially, yes, you're seeing that through the lens of literal, i.e., yes, there's just genders and there is a surface level to it, and you can see things through that lens of like men are like this and women are like that, and there's some truth and usefulness to it. But if you take that as just all there is, you're going to get really caught up in like divisive left brain right brain thinking. Whereas if you're keeping that, you're seeing the trees and the forest, that holistic viewpoint, tapping into the intuition and seeing the metaphor, the story that's being told for you through the literal events that are unfolding, then you can see this greater theme of what I'm kind of getting at here as cosmic sexuality, where essentially everything is sexual in some way of its very existence. Take a thing, it injected itself, it thrusted itself into existence, very like masculine, very phallic, right? Thrusting hard to not invade, that would be a more negative, but like to occupy the empty space that is the space-time. That's the matter, that's maternal, that's feminine, the womb, the primordial womb. You're existing in the matter, you're being born. You see that it's allegorical. If you're not looking at things through that lens too, you're completely missing all the purpose and the bigger picture in seemingly mundane day-to-day events. There's wisdom just unfolding all around you if you're actually paying attention and looking for those bigger stories, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that you hit on that, because it's when we get down to the essence of it, you can really see that the essence of that, of the feminine being the creator, or the space that holds, and then the masculine being that which is contained, or that which exists within that space. You could even think of that as in regards to Mother Earth, right? And then the consciousness of Vishnu, coming down here in different manifestations and existing, if you're looking at it through a Hindu perspective. That being that masculine energy coming into play, and then again through different fractals, that same process playing out over and over again in many different ways. So when you start getting the essence of things, you can see that spirituality doesn't have to be this extremely complex thing. When you get the gist of it, you get the essence, you can get down to the roots of it, the foundation, and understand those. You can see how that plays out within everything. This is why the understanding of cosmic law, of universal law, is so important, because when you have that understanding, you can apply it to every single situation, both in your personal life or within the world. And then you can see the patterns, you can see the connection points.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge piece to being able to understand this cosmic puzzle that we're all in.
Yeah, that's the essence of your empowerment, right? When you have that choice in every moment, you have that knowledge of, if I do this, then this will happen. Then you're stepping into proactive towards your desires, as opposed to constantly reacting to things that are happening to you. It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's a completely different mindset. So yeah, good stuff. If you're liking this content so far, let us know. Let us know in the comments. We want to hear it. Um, and yeah, he's saying like there's some interesting thing that was happening with your background for a second, where all that your tapestry, it looked like
Mm-hmm.
LSD or something. Like there was all these bright colors and
Oh,
stuff. It was weird.
yeah. My
Which
chair
is
probably
cool.
just bumped into it or something.
No, it was like a digital glitch thing, but
Oh,
anyways,
interesting.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, no, yeah. We're just looking over those characteristics and seeing that everything has those characteristics to them, and so better understanding the archetypes that are driving those energetic forces, the better you're going to be able to be proactive, as I said, and make better outcomes. But that also always has to be tempered with, again, as I said, not assuming too much or pigeonholing your assumptions like on the thing that will stifle it of being what it actually is, and then you're going to get bad results because you're acting on false information, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like you always have to keep that on point.
Well, and that's a great way to kind of lead into the next point of bringing up the law of polarity. Like when you're talking about getting, stuck or stifled on a point, you're getting stuck into one or the other. So when you're looking at something, it's important to make sure that you're looking at it from both perspectives. Look at it from the feminine, get into your feelings, get into the creativity, your intuition. At the same time, empathy as well as, another good one there that's feminine. But also lean into the masculine. Well, where's the logic behind this?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, the feminine, if it's unbalanced, we might feel a certain way about one thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean uh, that thing logically makes sense for us to feel that way, right? Sometimes our feeling and our logic don't match up. They can seem like they're at different polarities. This is why understanding the two and how to unify them and use them together is so important, in being able to find that balance point. And keep in mind that the balance point is not this place of stagnation where you're just, you're up on a mountain meditating and everything's perfect and shit like that. No, the balance point is being able to go through life, real life, and lean into the masculine or the feminine as needed. While, and even when you're leaning into one, never forgetting the other.
Right.
It doesn't go away. It may take more of a back seat at that time. For example, like if you're upset about something, right? You might need to set those feelings back and see, like, oh, I have these feelings about that, but I also need to set that aside, my personal projection aside, and look at the logic behind the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
What was real quick? I have a good analogy here too. Is
Sure.
in terms of balance, and analogies are so great because literally, again, it's the same essence contained in the things that we're talking about on a more literal level. So it's funny that
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like the metaphor is literal. It's kind of a mind fuck.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, basically, it's like riding a bike. Okay, that is balance, literally, like physical balance. So you could say yes, literal
Hmm.
sometimes, or a meaning like on the physical plane is more kind of a way
Hmm.
that people tend to think more of. And so, like riding a bike, it literally is physical balance. When if you're riding along and your bike starts tipping towards the left a little bit, and you're feeling like you might fall over, that fear is warranted because it's true. If you don't take action, you're gonna fall. You
Yeah.
need to be concerned with that. Two, just because you're leaning left and it might make you fall doesn't make left bad or right good. Just because you're needing to lean
Hmm.
right to counterbalance, it doesn't make one of those good or bad, because as soon as you lean too far to the right, oh, suddenly left's seeming a lot better than it was a second ago,
Hmm.
because now you need that to correct. So that's the dance that you're always playing.
Yeah, well, and even to to take that metaphor a little bit further, because I think it's an excellent choice for one. Think about the purpose of a bike, right? It's to drive you forward. It's a
Yeah.
vehicle which transports you and gives you that experience. This is what the masculine and feminine are doing. It's the play between the two that is driving our consciousness forward. It's the walk of consciousness between masculine and feminine. And you think about a bike, when you pedal, what are you doing? You have to, if you want to pedal and go forward, you have, if you're only pushing with your left foot, you're not, if you're only pedaling with one foot, you're going to look real funny doing it, one,
Mhm.
but you're not going to get very fucking far.
Or if you're only
If you
leaning
want
to the
your
left.
true if you want your true power, you have to pedal with both feet, and that play between them is what
Right.
propels you forward.
Exactly. And if you can't get your feet to agree, and if you can't get the left and the right to agree, you ain't going
Right?
nowhere. You can
Yeah.
point all day to your bike to take you off the magical lands, but if you can't get your internal space in order and in agreement, in integration, then you going nowhere.
Mm-hmm. You know, hmm. That is kind of, this may get a little bit off, but it can also tie in. It has me thinking, like, when you're first learning to ride a bike, you have training wheels. So what is it? Is it little children have their training wheels on the bike? Well, in the same way, because they're little, they haven't necessarily learned, and this could apply to adults just as well. But when they haven't learned the balance of the masculine and feminine, what do they have to do? They have to have other wheels for support, the other masculine and the other feminine, the father and the
That's
mother.
good.
And as we become more independent, ideally, we should
Dude,
be taking off our fucking training wheels
at
and
some point,
being able to propel ourselves forward. The issue is that I think a lot of, maybe a lot of us, a lot of adults are still
driving the
riding with our emotional training wheels, or expecting other people to be responsible
it's
for our emotional state of being, or our actions and what we're doing in the world.
also, yes, dude, I'm loving this just extrapolating more, and that's what we're talking about, is like we're just talking about one experience called riding a bike, but just by
Mm-hmm.
paralleling or bridging two concepts in our minds simultaneously, we just keep finding new parallels to extrapolate
Mm-hmm.
that wisdom. That's what we're talking about. but
Yeah,
but
that,
you're gonna love this one too in terms of the
sure.
parenting thing, because it's showing you this training wheels thing is showing you what good parenting looks like too, because think about it. The training wheels don't just touch the ground and make you drive in a perfectly straight line where you couldn't fall over if you tried, right? They're lifted up so that you still feel that, like you are still having to kind of uh, find your own equilibrium within the median. The wheels are there to almost like those bumpers when you go bowling. They're just kind of tapering off the no red zones on each side, the extremes that could cause a serious injury. That's what parenting is it's like letting them trapeze and you're the safety net. They can still fall. It's just that they're not going to die. You're saving them from anything catastrophic. You're ensuring that they will survive their mistake in order to learn from it. Because if you're just holding them every time, they won't actually learn, and you're just enabling them to be a basement dweller. So this is that perfect balance, even in the whole parenting, or even outside of parenting, like being a good friend or being a supportive partner. It can fall into this zone just as much, of like offering support in terms of not going to let like the whole ship crash, but also making sure that everyone's kind of doing their part. That's what any good partnership should be.
Thing is, like, they have to make their mistakes. They're very much learning, just like, just like we all are. We all have to make our mistakes, and that requires falling sometimes. But being there as a parent to make sure that, like, okay, yeah, they're gonna climb all over this thing, but I'm gonna try to make sure they at least don't like face plant. It's that type of, they definitely will teach you those lessons. And I do like that. But you had mentioned something else with the bike. Oh yeah, in that the training wheels, that they're just a little bit off the ground. They're there just to catch you if you're going. I really like that, because it shows that intimately there is always that self responsibility. And as you're going through life, you're supposed to be gaining more balance, more understanding of this responsibility. And there's we could, yeah, and we could think of this, the whole kind of saying, like, people say that, like, oh, like, once you learn to ride a bike, you never forget it, right? It's just like riding a bike, right? Exactly. Once you understand it's there. This is exactly how the masculine and the feminine work. When you understand their essence, it's there. It can be applied anywhere very easily, very smoothly, and it's just like riding that bike. So I thought that was, like, maybe another interesting thing that we could pull from that metaphor.
Yeah, I love that.
But, getting back, another way to look at the essence, and this is a useful way I found it, that I use this explanation when I'm doing, like, relationship consultations and things like that, is in the Vedic text, there's an explanation of the sun and the moon, Surya and Chandra. But we can see these being the masculine and the feminine, right? And it describes Surya as a square and Chandra as a ball. He rolls around, he's fickle, he moves. Surya's fixed. You think about the transit of the sun. The sun rises every day and sets every day at a very, it shifts during the year, obviously, because of the season's time, but it's very predictable, right? The moon, though, has a little bit of a different pattern, right? The moon's kind of wayward. It wanders a little bit more. It's not just the same repeated pattern over and over again as much. It does have its pattern that it repeats, but it's a more of a wayward pattern, so to speak. So you can see that in just the different approach between the masculine and the feminine. Think about it in, like, a relationship. If and this could play out between masculine and feminine, like the man and woman, or it could just play out just even with individuals, even if a man's leading into his feminine energy and then a woman has to lean into the masculine. But the same truth still applies. If there's too much, like, feminine energy, right, there's a lot of water going on, right? So typically how this would play out in your traditional relationship is the woman could be, feeling unsure about something, maybe there's some issues coming up in life, some challenges, and there's some strong emotions about those things. She's maybe feeling like a little bit like a ball. This is where the masculine energy is useful for balancing out, because being that square, that predictable of, like, no, it's going to be fine. Here's the reflection. Let's look at this logically. What action can we take on this thing? Bringing in that balance, and the same thing, in reverse, if that masculine is too rigid, and it can't flex and change at all, it's actually not going to be good at adapting and going through life and problem solving. The masculine's true ability, which is to problem solve, that's what men we like to do. We like to solve problems. People a lot of time will shit on that and make it seem like it's a toxic trait, but it's people that really don't understand the purpose of the masculine and the feminine. The masculine likes to problem solve, and the feminine does too in its own way. But the masculine can't really problem solve unless it has an ability to truly be adaptable. So it needs that feminine. So you need that flexibility, but you also need to know when to be rigid. You think about you know, like the masculine, like the intellect, the logic can be like a mirror, right? But you think about a mirror, if you're looking at it, well, what do you want it to be? You want it to be flat, right? It's masculine, it's flat, straight. Why is that? So it gives you the clearest reflection back. If that mirror was rounded, what would that do? That would distort the image. Much in the same way that if we're stuck in our own emotions, the projection of those,
That's good.
it can distort the way our, you know, the reflection that we're seeing. So that's why it's good to be able to balance it with that masculine energy and look at that more flat, that straightforward reflection, you know, at the same time, and then be able to balance that with the feminine, with the emotions and the feelings of things, and find that, like I said, that pivot point between the two.
Absolutely, loving all this. What you're saying. um, Thanks, guys, for everyone who's still here. By the way, and
Mhm.
do stay till the end if you're watching, because we're gonna kind of wrap things up with some Q&A at the end. So we're not ignoring questions or anything like that. I see there's a couple in there, and we're gonna get to those in just a little bit. But I see we still have 7 people in here, so I should see at least 7 likes down there, right?
Yeah.
Come on, guys. So yeah, man, I'm loving that. Like, there's just a million and one ways you could take this with. Yeah, geometry
Mhm.
is a huge one. Like the ball and the square, the straight line versus the curve. Like, you know, a
Mhm.
couple of my favorites would be like, say, if you're not using lasers and rulers and stuff to build a house, your house is gonna totally suck ass, because a house needs a strong foundation first, and that is the masculine. That square, rigid. I mean, that is the most like sound shape, so it's going to be the most stable and long lasting. And then once you have that, then you decorate the home with the feminine. You know, you make the house a home and all that kind of stuff. um Also, for some reason, I really like to think of hair in this way as well. So everyone wants to tame their hair, they want to rule their hair, right? That's what you train it, you know, to do a certain thing or whatever. Or you have a bad hair day, like it's an
Mhm.
ongoing thing. And everybody knows straight hair is a lot easier, it's more manageable. It's, you know, it's straight and it all goes the same direction, it lays down, all that kind of stuff. And then that would be the masculine in this case, kind of like going along to get along, not in the divine masculine, but uh, I always think of curly hair as unruly. And so it's that squiggle line that doesn't really make sense, but like crows are still beautiful, even though it's really hard to tame it and all that kind of stuff. So it's like the, you know, a nice neat city, like city streets are all blocks and lines and skyscrapers versus like a wild, full of bushes and shrubs, and just kind of like you see the difference in like just in the allegories and things like that. Maybe
Mhm.
rabbit trailing a little bit, but again, it's these are just like my own personal observations that I've always kind of resonated in viewing these things kind of playing out. So I absolutely love the ball and the square one is a really good one, because it depends on what you need, and that's kind of the bigger
Mhm.
takeaway, is the real power is learning to master both. Like when you're looking at the yin yang, this might seem obvious, it might not, but it's not just this circle with a line straight down the middle, one's black, one's white, and yeah, you just balance those, right? It's a dance. It like swirls like this, so it's like this elegant interplay between the two. And even within those, there's a piece of the other in each. They each share
Mhm.
a part of the other inside of them. So it's like if you lean too far in any one direction without keeping tethered with that, you lose all your power. So it's yeah,
Sure.
it's really about being able to dance. And mostly though, is using your intelligence and your discernment to analyze real time which energy is appropriate to lean into to meet each situation that you're in. Is it the time
Mhm.
to, you know, push forward and take action? Is it the time to stop and analyze and like take the, because I just realized the air can actually. I first my mind goes to a bird. Like you get the bird's eye view, you zoom out and you can
Hmm.
see more, and
Sure.
that brings you up above the rushing waters and all of that chaos of emotion. It gives you that bird's eye view of clarity, but also if you want to solve a problem, sometimes you have to go the other way. You have to zoom in, even like you zoom all the way into it, and super
Hmm.
like a microscope. You're analyzing the
Hmm.
smaller pieces. So again, you see what I'm saying? Sometimes maybe you want to just fight and thrash, but it's actually the time to submit and sort of just surrender and like let the emotions flow, or
Hmm.
express those verbally or whatever have you. Is it the time for connection, or is it the time for boundaries? Like these are all things that play in. And as you can see, we're not talking about just penis vagina penis vagina. Like it just plays into everything in terms of sexuality. It's everywhere.
Right. Sure. One, I like that you brought up the analogy of a bird's eye view, but also like being needing to dive into something in detail, because it's the polarities. We see again the law of polarity playing out here, and another good foundational way, and I find this very essential for understanding the masculine, feminine, is understanding them through the elements. This is something I use in my practice of Vedic astrology a lot, and it helps you see that masculine and feminine aren't just so one-sided, so to speak, or so black and white. So first off, you need to understand that if we're dealing with the four different elements: earth, water, fire, air, we want to see them. You can see two being associated with feminine and two being masculine. Earth and water being associated with the feminine, and fire and air being associated with the masculine. So to start with the feminine elements, Earth has that ability to be sturdy, to be reliable, to be grounded. Like when you say someone's down to earth, they probably have some earthy element in their chart. It's that firmness. But on the downside, the flip side, if we're using that too much, we could end up being too stubborn, too stuck. So what's on the other side of the feminine, the other polarity of the feminine? It's water, being able to flow, to become any shape. But what if water flows too much? It becomes too destructive. What's it need? It needs the other part of the feminine, the earth, to balance it out. You think about a river flowing. It flows. It's allowed to be itself. But the banks of the river temper that flow. Okay, so that's and you can dive into this deep. This is a lifelong observation and study that you'll continue to gain wisdom from if you understand the essence of this. Then the masculine, we have air, which is our logic, our communication, very left brain type of thing there. Then there's fire, which is our action, our passion, our drive, our initiative, wanting to do things. So you can see here, why is it that men, like I mentioned earlier, it's our essence to problem solve, because the masculine elements are air and fire. It's wanting to think about things and understand them, wanting to communicate about it, and then wanting to take action, to take initiative.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you'll see that, when, and I see this a lot, where people will talk about the term like mansplaining, right. I really see that as just a lot, a lot of people totally misunderstanding the essence of what the masculine is
Projection.
trying to do. And it's that when a man is trying to do that, or they're trying to fix or solve something, they're not trying to do that because they don't think anyone else is capable of it, or a woman's incapable of it. They're just being who they are. Just like when a woman is caring and nurturing and loving, she's not, doing that because she feels like she's more loving or more nurturing or anything, or more capable of that than the man does. She's doing it because it's the essence of who she is.
Absolutely.
So we need to stop shitting on the masculine and feminine and each other for being the expression of the essence of what we really are.
Right. I would say, and to just to reflect on that, I agree with the
Hmm.
sentiment. I can see why the perception exists sometimes, because it's like, obviously the issue is if someone's being pretentious and like being a know-it-all, that's totally a thing. People are
Right.
like that. Men can be like that, women can be like that. And I could even go as
Exactly.
far as to say, because men tend to be problem solvers, that maybe they're more susceptible to using that to feel important. Like, well, I know all this and I'm
Hmm.
going to, explain it to
Sure.
you, that kind of thing. But so it's like not even I'm taking ownership of like the why that perspective exists, but also reflecting back that it's just not a useful way to frame things. In other words, like even though that's at play, you can have a higher perspective of simply let's just look down on know-it-alls and not make it about gender. Let's just shun that kind of bad behavior, regardless of who
Right.
does it. And I think that's the thing
Exactly.
we need to take on in general. That's a whole other topic right there, as far as all the virtue signaling and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, yeah, there's so much of that going on with the misinterpretation of sacred masculine being this toxic thing and misreading it. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, because and I wanted to relate this also because I love how we've been discussing this a lot between us in terms of everything having that equal and opposite reaction. So like
Hmm.
you could see problem solving if you, even at a subconscious level, might think that the problem is you, or the problem is something to do with you, then naturally you would resist someone's inclination to look at problems, to put that microscope on things and start analyzing and picking apart to identify what that problem is, because you don't want that traced back to you. But um, essentially, what I'm saying is, uh, but it's being perceived as a negative, like a critical or even something destructive. But by destroying a problem, you're creating more flow, more balance and peace and harmony, which you could even say are more feminine qualities. That's the Venusian earthly things. So that masculine is actually lending way to more abundance of those feminine qualities.
Right. Well, and it's, it's just to look at it like on the flip side, like with the feminine many times is associated with chaos, right? You have chaos and order,
Kali.
destruction and creation, right? So you have, and there's both masculine and feminine versions of each. That's why, you have Shiva, and his angry form is Rudra. And then you have Parvati, Shiva's wife, her angry form is Mother Kali. Okay, so there's this, but so the feminine does have this ability to be chaotic and destructive, and at the same time, and we've discussed this before, wherever there's destruction, there's also creation. They're both are going on, so uh, it, we just approach them in different ways. Men can approach that destructive process from a process of wanting to understand things and pick things apart. That's what the left brain does. It's the intellect. It means to pick apart from among. So it's to break it down, look at all the pieces, and then assemble it and see how it works. The feminine can destroy things from like emotions,
Right.
right? From that more chaotic kind of state, and that could be a gift, or that could also be a detriment
Hmm.
if it's done if it's a gift if it's done in a balanced way and done in a proper timing and when it's needed. It's a detriment if you totally can't control your emotions at all, and then you feel like, just because you're upset or whatever, that the whole world has to deal with it, or whatever it may be. And there's no balance, there's no logic, no masculine balancing that out. So we have to understand, with the masculine and the feminine, just like with anything else, our strengths can be our weaknesses and our weaknesses our strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make sure that you're tempering each with the other, so as to make sure that you're not using that energy in an imbalanced or improper way.
Right. Absolutely. Those are great points, and I think a good way to kind of like wrap this all together
Hmm.
and tie this up, and then again we will take some questions if you guys have more and address the ones we have. But like you said, it's about flowing, and it's a dance, right? You don't go out on a dance floor and just stand there and look around. Like you're in a perpetual state of motion, not because you have to be, because you want to be. You're at one with the moment, the music, the people around you. All of that is playing into your feeling of freedom. That's just letting you let loose and dance. So
Hmm.
take that into your everyday interaction with life, and don't be stagnant one way or another. Like if you're too comfortable, if you don't take risks, you're going to be stagnant in your life because you're not leaning into the masculine and being bold, taking risk, taking action, all that kind of stuff. But hey, if you're a workaholic and you're absolutely burning yourself out, you need to take a break. You're being stagnant in your grind, and it's actually not getting you to your goals as fast as you could be if you would just lean into the feminine of care, rest, respite. You know what I'm saying? So there's a million and one ways you could apply this, but that's the point, is that no matter what you're doing, there's still some kind of oscillation that you need to be doing. You can't just suck air in forever. You have to breathe out too,
Right.
and then breathe again. Like it's always happening. Your
Mhm.
heartbeat, everything. So just that's the main takeaway that I'm offering, is just to reiterate, observe nature. Stop making assumptions about what you think you know and just look at what's actually happening, and then make those observations, draw the bigger patterns, and then start to apply them to your own mindset and how you approach situations. And then make sure that you're not stagnant in one way or another, that you're always dancing with
Mhm.
life.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to kind of wrap that up with. Is a good summary of it. And like I said, this is a subject that we can you could spend again lifetimes and lifetimes studying and not get it all.
Absolutely.
So obviously, we're not going to all cover it all in a short episode. But again, if you can start to get the essence, if you can take those little clues, like the elements and things like that, and start thinking about those, start observing those patterns, like Logan was saying, in your life, and seeing the common theme, seeing the connection point between them, then universal law, cosmic law, that's when it truly does become universal,
Mm,
is when you can see how it applies in everything.
very well said. Absolutely. So yeah, let's get into some comments here. I see a few. Cody, great to see you in here, bro. Love you,
Mhm.
man. He says, "Workaholic. I have to be very mindful of this." Oh, actually, let me switch to there. My my fancy thing that I made. Let's use it. Um, so he says, "Workaholic. I have to be very mindful of this as I have a habit of working 18-hour days." Yep, that's
Yeah.
that's me. I more lean on this side where
Mhm.
my partner will be like, "Hey, so you haven't like really taken care of you might want to shower or eat some food or something like that." I'll be like, "You know what? That's a good idea."
Yeah. 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 I can relate to that. I have my Saturn in my 10th house, so that definitely I
Hmm.
forget, I get just completely immersed, sometimes in my studies to where I'll do things like forget to eat or whatever it may be. And yeah, and Brittany will always be sure to come in and remind me, that I need to do those things, which is useful. Again, it's that, where the masculine's being imbalanced, what does the feminine somehow have to do it? It shows up in a different manifestation, a different form, your
Hmm.
wife, and it's like, hey, honey, you need to do this,
Right.
very, very useful. So,
How about
again, we can see this play out all over.
how about this? If we if you're watching, whether it's a replay or live, if you lean more towards the feminine, then care react. If you're on Facebook, then and then heart react if you lean more towards the masculine, like a pole built in
Yeah,
there.
that works. So.
Craig Burns said, "Let your hair tame itself and have dreads, the most ancient hair known to man or beast. I mean, yeah, that's one take. Personally, I think mowing your yard sometimes is good. Just keeping, you know, keeping a little bit doesn't mean you have to have
Mhm.
like the perfect astroturf or anything like that, but just a little bit of imbuing with you know, intent and like a vision.
Yeah, well, and again, that a lot of that will come down to personal preference, and much of
Mm-hmm.
that can actually be seen in the chart. There are certain nakshatras and dispositions where, for example, like Ardra nakshatra, uh, Ardra nakshatra will have people that they'll tend to have dreaded hair or knotted hair or braided hair, stuff like my Jupiter sits in Ardra. But I also like to be clean shaven as well,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not that there's just a one approach for everybody.
Yeah, if you
You
like
know what I
dreads,
mean? Like,
by all
do your
means,
thing,
just not
but
hundred
some people like
percent.
to be a little bit more clean. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of on the side that I like to lean.
Let's see here. Craig also said, "How do you feel that the androgynous goddesses have fitted in with the standard view of the male-female polarity?" Um,
Well, I think when you really understand what an androgynous god is, you're seeing that it's just an expression of both the masculine and the feminine. In any animist or pagan culture, you're going to look and see uh, both masculine and feminine expressions in both things. For example, both like within the Norse and the Vedic culture, the sun is seen both as masculine and feminine. There's an external and an internal expression of it.
mm-hmm.
The same in the Vedic, culture. Like Chandra, the moon. He's said to have wives. He's said to be a male, but at the same time, the moon's associated with feminine energy. So they have both of these expressions, and that's why we're saying you have to see masculine and feminine beyond just gender. Like you have to, or a physical gender. You have to see uh, the essence again, and how they work together. So I could see maybe many of those androgynous archetypes or deities being misunderstood because we misunderstand the masculine and feminine within ourselves. But if again we bring that animist perspective, and like Logan was saying, observe nature and understand that, I don't think there has to be a misunderstanding with those at all. And there are plenty of people in the world that still have an animist worldview, that there's not really that confusion with them. I would say that would be more of a Western type of phenomenon with that.
Right, exactly. I would say that it's a common misunderstanding in terms of like how to play the balance. I feel that your power is rendered inert in neutrality. Neutrality is not the
Mm-hmm.
aim. It's to be able to lean into the polar extremes, but in a tempered way, so that you don't go
Yes.
all the way. You kind of keep that little black dot or the white dot in there. You keep that temperance, but you're leaning into one because that's where the power actually is, not just being neither, like just being as neutral and like ambiguous as possible. I don't think that that's
Mm-hmm.
what the mythology was trying to convey in the androgynous depictions that you're referring to. I would see more
Yeah.
as an internal kind of principle of mentalism, embodying both and having a mastery of both, not being wishy-washy on either, basically, if that makes
Right.
sense. Not that that's what you were necessarily implying. I think you were just kind of asking the question. So I appreciate the question. Very good
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
thoughtful
Good
answer there.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like we got a few more coming in too. This is great. Um, let me switch back to Will. Good to see you in here, bud. He said the same thing. It's psychological.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jung's anima versus animus. Are we all androgynous in spiritual form? That's an interesting question. I mean, first of all, I don't think just being in a non-physical form exempts you from universal laws. There's always masculine and feminine playing out.
It manifests on all planes. That's, if you read their gender, manifest on all planes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even if there are androgynous deities, but there's also deities that very much are more of a masculine association, more of a feminine association. Or you'll see even in certain stories, there are like a deity, and they will split themselves into different beings, some of them being feminine and some of them being masculine. You see this a lot within the Vedic tradition. So I mean, if you were to look at it, it depends on how you look at it. Again, see, there's different, and anything with animist and pagan mindset, you have to understand it's multifaceted, it's multi-leveled.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a true androgynous source or something like that? You could think of source consciousness like that, but even within the Vedic tradition, we describe everything as Vishnu,
Which is kind of both,
right?
right?
And then everything comes out of that. But Vishnu himself is still associated more with masculine. Even when you see the Trimurti, it's split up into Vishnu, the preserver, Brahma, the creative force, and Shiva, the destructive force.
Hmm.
And then they each have their Shaktis, their feminine counterpart. Brahma has Saraswati, the beauty, the gift of speech, of poetry, of song. That creative force that comes, with that's the Shakti of Brahma. With Shiva, you have Parvati. With Vishnu, you have Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, because if Vishnu is, if you're wanting to create everything in the universe, what do you need? You need abundance to do that. So that's his Shakti. So each of these, why they can be explained in a masculine, in a myth, there's always the feminine counterpart, as well. So depending on how you choose to look at it, you could see it, either way. You could see the androgynous perspective, but at the same time, even for that to exist, it has to have both the masculine and the feminine within it. So there still has to be that polarity. They may be at a balance point, at a balance of centered with both of those, but there's still both elements. They're still both there. So there's still that level of individuation there, and that fractal will play out on all levels and planes of manifestation.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I think it's important to note that not all deities are necessarily good or bad or necessarily something that you should want to model yourself after either. The point is, all energetic forces of the cosmos are here to teach you, and it may be teach you how to be or how not to be. That apophatic process is very much always at play, and it's up to you to discern which it is. The trickster will literally tell you, yeah, you should do that. That's a great idea. Right? I mean, so it's on you. You're always responsible for yourself and your actions. That is the ultimate highest lesson that everything always is going to reflect back to. So I just thought that was worth noting, as well as just because a deity is a certain way is also not necessarily meaning that you should model yourself after that, or hold it as a positive kind of thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What I've Sean just said. Let's see. Yes, exactly. What I've seen from both Germanic and Celtic lore is the sun was seen as feminine to our ancestors, but the rays and light, often masculine beings, and
Mm-hmm.
many gods had solar because soul. Don't really understand that last part just by the wording, but Sean, you look like you got something.
Say that again. Well, sorry, could you read it again just one more time? Like I said, that last part was a little bit confusing. I can't actually see. I was trying to click that link for the stream, and it wasn't pulling up on my phone.
Okay.
So I can't actually read them.
It says, from what I've seen, both Germanic and Celtic lore is the sun was
Mm-hmm.
seen as feminine, or is the sun was seen as feminine to our ancestors, but the rays and light, often masculine beings, and
Yes.
gods had solar because soul. It's saying
Yeah.
had solar because of soul, like the spelling. I get the relation of solar and
Right.
solar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting that the sun, because it is an orb, it is a celestial body, and then the rays of light are the phallus the phallic light projection of that energy, essentially.
Right.
That
It's the
beams
initiation of it.
down
Yes.
like and hits
Hmm.
the earth, which is feminine, also another orb, and imbues Earth with life, creative energy too. Because without the sun, there would be no life on Earth.
Right. Right. Exactly. So yeah, no, that's an excellent point to
Cool.
bring up. Hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for that comment, Sean. So I think that's all of our questions. And if not, I apologize. But also, again, if you're watching on the replay or if we missed the question, drop your questions down
Hmm.
below. We'll still come back and answer those as much as we can. So we appreciate everyone watching. Uh, Again, this is a new and consistent type of content that we'll be offering here. For those that missed last week's episode or the beginning of this one, you can expect us every Thursday at 11:30 Central a.m. And we'll be just discussing different topics, and then we'll have a Q&A session as well. So if you haven't already, please go check out our website at thewizardfactory.com, and as well as possibly go visit our Patreon and check out our 2 tiers that we have available, as we're going to be focusing on that quite a lot moving forward. And do get our free initiation package, also available at thewizardfactory.com. It's a free course that it gives you access also to our private Facebook and Discord servers, and definitely worth the cost of free fitty. So I'll just leave it at that. Brian, anything to add, sir?
No, just enjoyed getting into this topic. And again, yeah, like if you guys are watching this on the replay, be sure to put your comments in there. Put in maybe some of your observations of how the masculine and feminine is played out in your own life, and maybe some different patterns that you observe. We'll definitely be interacting in the comments afterwards. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and until next time, be empowered, be inspired, and be encouraged.
Thanks for watching, everyone.